Hello, everybody. This is a terrible idea, Steve. I've just realised this is my first ever live stream, and I decided to do it with the person who's probably done more live streams in this sphere than anybody else in the past 12 months.
Uh, more period or more with you?
We could probably do both as a pair. We've done quite a lot, but
Yeah.
let's start off by just saying we're here to talk about True Detective. So if anybody's not here to listen or talk about the first series and specifically episode 1 of True Detective, you might want to go watch it and then come back. Or if you don't care, stick around. We'll probably have a bit of fun and might find some illuminating things to find out of it. But before we do any of that, I'll let Steve introduce himself, especially if you're new to my channel from watching movies, etc., and you don't know who Steve is. This might be a good way for you to get to know Steve. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, first, thanks for having me because I've always wanted to talk about this series with someone, so I'm so excited
Cool.
to have the chance. But I am Steve from Steve Talks Books on YouTube, and I can also be found on Steve Talks Movies or on pagechewing.com.
Cool. And so
Excited to
you've
be here.
recently launched this new channel where you're talking about movies, TV kind of thing. Seems to be going all right, although you've set yourself a pretty ridiculous challenge, I was going to say.
Yeah, I have 32 videos in 32 days, and yeah, I've been questioning my decisions, but we're too far into it, so it's too late. I've come too far to turn back. So
Well, this is day 3, isn't it? Even though it's kind of not your channel, but we'll be alternating these week on, week out at the same time. Hopefully, next week's will be on Steve's other channel. And yeah, I've seen people do these 30 days challenges every now and again, Steve, and they go great, and then they get to about day 25, and they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore.
yeah, I have about 10 videos done, so we'll see how it works out. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. We've even got some people here. This
Nice.
is just terrific. So Leila's here. Evening,
Yeah.
Leila. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about the series myself as well. Alicia's here. Hi, Alicia.
Hey, Alicia.
And my newest Goodreads friend, actually, as it turns out.
Oh, cool.
And Aaron's here as well, with a hey. So let's hope everybody's seen the series. We'll start off, I think, by just saying, kind of, when K2 is here
Cool.
as well.
K2.
Nice. Like you've seen this series before from start to finish, more than once, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I rewatched it back in the summertime.
Okay.
So it's
That's
still
the most
pretty
recent watch.
fresh.
Yeah, so I've never actually made it to the end of the first series. I started to watch it. I don't know if you're anything like me, but I sometimes pick series from myself and the wife to watch. And after about 3 or 4 episodes, she goes, not bad. So that happened with Breaking Bad, for instance. She didn't really like the first 3 or 4 episodes of Breaking Bad. And then it took me, I would say, another year and a half to get to the end of the first series. And then I was like, Brendan, I'm away without you. So I've done the first four episodes this a couple of times. But so, like, these first couple of episodes I have seen before, but without kind of really thinking through and kind of thinking of another death rather than just let's see if we can follow along.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. So I think the show for me mainly is the first episode's very much about introducing our 2 main characters. I've sort of labelled you as Marty on the thumbnail and me as me as Cole.
Yeah. It's a great thumbnail, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's really about them, and I think there's loads of stuff even from the outset that they use to contrast because it's very much shot in this kind of POV interview style. So what kind of things strike you from the start?
Well, first I want to mention I love the introduction. I think it's my all-time favorite intro. Just the music and the images and the that whole sequence is just done.
It's terrific. But I did write down, the amount of iconography. If I even we were talking about Last of Us, I think you think of the like iconography, sort of is harkens back and is similar to that. Although I can't remember things doing it quite in the same way, given the kind of themes that are in this first series of True Detective. That you kind of go, ooh,
yeah.
There's a lot of things being thrown at you immediately, and you kind of think, right, maybe a lot of this will be pulled apart in the series as we go through it, and maybe the intro sequence might make a bit more sense as we go through.
Yeah, I think in the introduction to your question about kind of for like first impressions going in, one thing that I noticed this time that I didn't notice necessarily as much before as there's a lot of, like you said, contrast or opposition, because in the introduction we have like, we have like churches, we have we have like playgrounds, we have some other sexually suggestive stuff, so lots of opposition. And when the episode starts, all we have is someone carrying a body, and there's a
That's
fire
right.
started, and then we go right into character. We
Yeah.
go right into the camera's rolling, and then we have Cole and Russ talking about each other and kind of, explaining what each character, what the other person's like. And you immediately have the sense of opposition there. You have contrast. Then as the episode goes on, you have the religious side of like the South, like that whole thing, and then you have the satanic stuff of the murder scene. So lots of opposition, in the marriage, and it's like overflowing with contrast.
Yeah, and imagery. Like it's very much
Mhm.
imagery based. Even as we'll get to the murder scenes, etc., are all very kind of like these clues, iconography clues, kind of motif clues, all of that kind of stuff that goes through. The first thing that really jumps out to me is definitely the contrast between the two interview styles. So both in terms of their appearance, you've got Marty that's shot very much in uniform, clean cut, shaven, and I don't know if you noticed this, but actually the lens with which we see him through is very different to the one that we see Cole through. So it's almost like a fisheye lens that we see
Hmm.
Marty through, and it's a different angle, a lower angle and shot and stuff, and so he's looked kind of more imposing and bigger.
I didn't even notice that. That's a great observation.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. But yeah, it is a different angle and different framing for the two.
Yeah, and the amount of hair, because obviously going back in time, Marty has hair, now he has no hair, and now Cole had less hair, but now he has more hair.
Yeah. They did a great job de-aging them.
Yeah,
They look great. I mean, I wouldn't have known the difference had I not known them. And well, I don't know if they necessarily de-age them as much as they age them, because they look older in the interviews. Especially Matthew McConaughey looks older.
yeah,
He has the wrinkles and the kind of like I drink too much kind of look. Like
yeah.
I'm kind of, I have a problem kind of thing. So and then when he's younger, he has that youthful look to him. So
He's
they
like a
did a fantastic job.
boyish charm about him, even though he's kind of, sort of aloof. Even at the start, he is kind of, but he still has that kind of very clean cut, manicured hair, you know, dresses very neatly, you
Mhm.
know, even from that. Um, what are your initial impressions of both characters? Both likable? One likable more than the other one? Which one do you identify with?
I
Neither?
don't,
Both?
I think Rust is Matthew McConaughey, right?
Hmm.
I think he's a more interesting character, so I'm drawn to him. I think Cole is the more unlikable character because of his situation at home, and um, you could tell that also he kind of plays by the rules and doesn't really question a whole lot. He just wants to fly. He doesn't want to do too much or too little. He's just kind of there. He's just doing his time and he's getting out. So I felt like Rust is more interesting. He's more intriguing character
Yeah.
because of his history, and you get the impression right away that there's a lot of history with him, and there's a lot going on in his mind and what he's been through.
Yeah, you get the feeling that there's a lot to unravel with him.
Mhm.
Whereas I think Woody Harrelson's character is much more of I think it's the kind of character that a lot of us can identify or see in our life in some ways. The kind of offhand comments that he had when he used to describe himself like being a regular ass dude with a big dick, and you kind of go, there's an arrogance and
Yeah.
and curtness about him that I think is very off-puttish for an awful lot of people. Even the fact that there's a bit later on when he goes in to see the captain, and he
Mhm.
comes out and he's been told he's doing the interview, and he comes out and waits till he's outside, closes the door, and then makes a remark about what a dick the captain is, so that he sort of fits in with the crowd, that kind of loudish, lallish kind of thing, just for attention. And whereas Cole obviously doesn't seem to care as much. I
Mhm.
mean, he invites people into his house and he hasn't unpacked any boxes. He's not worried about appearance and what people think of him in that way. He's kind of got his own problems, as you say,
Yeah.
that hopefully we get to work through.
Mhm.
And even the fact that you get Cole gets this nickname of the Taxman then from the start. But is interesting. He's well read. He's all of those things that you think of.
Yeah, I think just like we've all known a Marty. We've all kind of known a Cole or a Russ too, right? Because he's a little strange. This is like a memory of a town when they're going in the park, and this is a town that's someone's memory that's fading. Or I can taste ash in my mouth. I can taste this weird taste in my mouth. Or he's, humans, they should walk in hand into extinction. They should stop reproducing because we're just on a path towards destruction. Yeah. So we've all known someone like that too. I think they're both identifiable in different ways.
Yeah, they sort of fit stereotypes, but not obvious ones in some ways. As being, they're on a level footing here. They're partners. This is like a buddy cop at the start here, and they are very well juxtaposed. Like I'd written down in my notes, they're very chalk and cheese, and we're told that they've fallen out with each other, but not about the case. And obviously that'll probably be explored as they're going through. But even the people interviewing them, it's towards the end of the episode that Marty realizes that they're not really asking anything about the case. They're actually talking a lot about their relationship, and that's the bit that they're probing and discussing.
Yeah, there's a few things we pick up in the first episode, and this won't spoil the rest of the series, but we find out that they caught the person who committed the murders. They say we caught that person. He also says we had a fallout years later, or 10 years later.
Yeah.
And they also kind of plant the seed that, where has Russ been? Where is he? Where have you been? What have you been up to? It's kind of planting doubt in our mind as the viewer of maybe there's something else going on here. So there's, in the interview in the dialogue, there's a lot that is explored, and he also talks about you can't pick your parents, and you can't pick your partner.
Yeah, but for as much as you kind of are meant to not like Woody Harrelson's character, I think that much in some ways are sort of judges about how decent a person he is. He is very open about the fact that he thought Russ was a very good detective. Even down the line, he did reach out and invite him into his home and say, "Look, you're coming, even though this is not totally my idea, but you're going to come and have dinner with me and my family and that kind of stuff." So he is kind of like the much more normal kind of family life, bit where we obviously get the implications that Cole's family's broken apart, deaths in the family, all of that kind of stuff that is obviously affected him. Like, one of the things that I always like is seeing actual what real trauma looks like rather than kind of like the Hollywood version of trauma.
So yeah, because you can tell right away that he's capable, but he's a mess because of what he's been through. His eyes are really red, and you can tell he isn't sleeping well. And when he's trying to get information from the sex workers, he sends one of them away, and then sits next to the other one, like, where can I get some pills? Because he needs it to sleep.
Yeah, and kind of going to the bar in the guise of doing police work, but actually going for the pills. You know what I mean? As a way to facilitate his problems, or deal with what seems to be the early stages of addiction, both in terms of that and then the drink that comes later. So Hart talks about the importance of marriage, family marriage, and later he might not be so wholesome indeed. Often that the people that talk about these things actually don't eschew the values of them quite so clearly.
Yeah, we do get glimpses of him coming home late, and his daughters are in bed, and it seems like everyone's kind of used to him not being around.
Yeah.
And in the morning, he falls asleep on the chair, and then
that's right.
He takes a couple of sips, and he's out the door again without really acknowledging his wife. So we kind of start to get the cracks there, that he may not be around all that much.
Yeah. Kind of like what I would say is the classic police stereotype in an awful lot of TV series in that way, and so far as the work's kind of pressurized or heavy enough that it is the excuse not to be there. Otherwise, so we'll go to the key scene basically, which is them getting to the murder scene. I actually have written down that on the way back, actually, they do have that conversation in the car, seeing and how it turns from what one person thought it was going to be into something completely different. But I think the murder scene itself is obviously something that's very staged. And like if you think back to the first time that you seen it, like the first time that I seen it was very much for anybody that's watched a lot of procedurals about crime, you go very into the CSI mode immediately when you see it yourself.
Yeah, I think, and it also sets the stage for the series too, because it's not just a murder. I mean, I don't want to say it's not just a murder, but it's something that it was meticulously planned and staged, and there's a message. So, and having it with that occult twist to it, we also know right away that, okay, this isn't going to be just a a random thing. This is something that's planned, and this is something that's there's someone sending the message. So it kind of sets the stage for this bigger story right away. It's within the first few minutes, and their techniques on the crime scene too, with him with his notepad with the tax man, and he's drawing everything really meticulously. So all of that, and the other police that were there were a little shocked, a little out of their element. Maybe they seemed, another stereotype of the good old boy cop that doesn't really have a whole lot to worry about, and all of a sudden he has this big case. Yeah. So lots of things in opposition there. Lots of things going on.
Yeah, I did write. I actually looked for the no synopsis for the show for the first episode, given that it's really all about these two characters, and it basically says the investigating murdered woman found in a burned sugarcane field near the town of Erith. The victim is bound and blindfolded, wearing a crown of roots and antlers with a blue spiral painted on her upper back, which is kind of setting the idea that this ritualistic scene or this ritualistic murder happened. And it's only like very early we get the information that this didn't happen in place. She was killed and transported on her back, probably laced with LSD in some way, was tortured in some way, and then staged and brought and placed in this way, blindfolded with the antlers, with the swirl on her back, and then these little I actually had to go and look them up. They're devil traps or something, isn't it? How do they describe them in the show?
Like the ornaments or the things that are like the things that are hanging from the tree.
Yeah, and the little triangular things that sit in the ground, indeed, which again gives the sense that is ritualistic and sort of linked to cult or religion in some way. Whether I think at the start it looks to me like it's supposed to be portraying Satanism of some sort or something of that ilk.
Yeah, I think that too is in the South you think it's the late 90s. It's not the satanic panic era of like the 80s, but it's still kind of hanging around. So you have the South, the very religious people in those areas, and then we also have the billboards with the missing children. So
that's right.
I noticed that this time you never really feel comfortable. There's always something in opposition almost the entire episode. There's always something fighting against something else, whether it's Rust and Cole or the two partners, or whether it's his marriage, or whether it's Rust is his addiction, he's battling this trauma that he has that we don't know about yet. He thinks he's seeing ghosts. So there's lots and lots of, and the cops in the precinct, they're all fighting with each other. There's a lot of conflict.
Yeah, a lot of tension, and they keep on layering it on as the episode goes on. Just when you think you're fighting all this satanic stuff, then the governor comes along and starts putting the anti-religion angle and message to say, God, you've got to keep this in mind as well. And like a lot of things are portrayed, they're more than one thing, and a lot of people, from the outside want a certain outcome of this rather than using it for political means or otherwise. So. Really interesting, like kind of setup and lay down of the themes that are play, and as the series goes through, I'm sure some are kind of become more prominent than other ones, etc. As they take the investigate down. But the missing people, I mean, they seem to be a lot of kids at the start, and they do go to investigate these missing these missing kids. Any of obviously you've watched the scene. The thing that jumped out at me is one of the kids they investigated. She talked about seeing a green-haired spaghetti monster in it. Which again, with the presence of LSD, I'd actually wrote down. It said there's a possible like a kid being listed with LSD or something. I guess that's one of the things that jumped out at me. And even when it comes being reported in the papers, it's been reported as an occult case very early doors. You know, basically labeling it and saying this is what this is in some way.
Yeah, interesting thought there. We'll have to see how it works out.
Yeah, indeed. So you kind of make your little predictions as we go along. Is there anything else you want to say about the scene, the stage in the scene, other than the sugar canes being burnt away around the body? I think there's a couple of things that come out of that, but I think that's shown pretty much at the start of the intro.
Yeah, the crown it's very very memorable. It strikes you right away. That's so it's a very striking scene to start, and it kicks off with that too. So I thought it was a pretty bold choice to start with so much character to begin with. I was surprised that it jumps right into character, developing characters right away.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed actually about filming it is they spend an awful lot of time to see the body, but we don't actually linger too much in the body. We kind of see it nearly profile in some cases and behind, but they spend an awful lot of time looking at the two characters' reaction, looking out at the scene, and it's some of the filmmaking in it is like, I think Cary Fukunaga as a director and writer is pretty spectacular. I know he made his name here, but if you've ever seen Beast of No Nation and even No Time to Die, which I think is a beautifully directed and shot film as well, he does a lot of soft focus, of which the two people are standing beside each other, but one's very clearly out of focus and one's in focus. And he just does a very subtle shift between the two of them as you just see the slightly different reactions. It happens a couple of times within this episode. I think sort of giving you this idea that while they're standing literally beside each other, they're worlds apart in terms of how they're seeing the same thing or looking at everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think of that or notice that about the focus on the character. But yeah, he's a great director. Yeah, and the writing in this, it's so good. So good.
Yeah, it's terrific. We'll go to some of the comments. So Aaron says, I think the Baptist priest talks about about his grandmother knowing that the traps are from Rust's images. Maybe loose voodoo links. Can't look for Steve's reaction.
I'm trying not to
show
anything.
And then Aaron said interesting about the LSD. Quite likely a young person would be interested in what is lying around and what her mother is using. Yeah, indeed. And KT said, for sure, he also started coughing as if he wants to say something. His wife spoke over him.
Yeah, lots of tension.
And lots of people involved in kind of being a part of these societies. And I think that's one of the things that has an interest level for me, not being from America, and especially, I say, south of North America being a completely fascinating region for exploring stories.
Yeah, it really is, and I love the South. People are so friendly and nice when I've been there. But yeah, it is ripe for storytelling for sure.
Yeah, it has that blend of like being a modern society, but having a certain amount of mysticism and its own culture that is kind of outside and alien to, say, East Coast America, the Eastern Seaboard, or something. Being incredibly different. And
oh yeah. Yeah, it's totally different, and it's I think sometimes people can look down on those areas, but I think there's some good things about those areas too. The sense of family and kind of the small towns that are disappearing now. So it's another angle too.
Yeah, it does strike me that an awful lot of you say look down on it comes from people stereotyping, and often the only representations we get of those areas are very stereotypical, and you don't actually get to see the people and the places in the same way that they get to. So I did find myself actually when they start, I love procedural talk. So when they talk about a 419,
Yeah.
And I go, right, I'm looking up what a 419 is, and there's a dead body found, and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
now I'm in with the lingo.
Yeah.
I can do that and have a look at that. Um, the conversation on the way back in the car is
Oh,
like
so
one of
good.
my favorite scenes in the entire episode for sure. Where Marty asks a very simple question, and he is then greeted with way more information than he ever hoped to garner from it.
Well, I think his original response was, I don't think we should talk about this at work." But he kept. So I mean, you asked, so here you go. Yeah, a lot is revealed about each character in that conversation
I
too.
think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot is revealed about them, and just their relationship too.
Yeah. I mean, from the outside looking in, again, first episode, thinking of it, what he's doing the sort of societal norms of making conversation to get over you know, awkward silences. He doesn't really want to engage in an exploration of character, whereas I think Cole's desperate to kind of share some of himself from his solitude in doing so.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because at dinner he does volunteer information to his wife, and he doesn't volunteer it to Marty, and I think Marty just does it maybe out of obligation or just kind of this what you're supposed to do. He doesn't really care.
Yeah. I had written that down actually that Marty's wife gets more out of Cole in about 30 seconds than Marty does for the entire other episode. So, again, get an idea that Cole's desperate to share his trauma and kind of exhume himself of it in some way, but the only way he can really do it is through drink or something at the time.
Do you think that she got more out of him because she was compassionate and curious, like genuinely curious, or do you think it's because of the anniversary of his daughter's passing and the daughters were there and it was like a family atmosphere? Maybe he felt.
Oh, I never thought about that aspect of it. I took it as she was probing him and asking him human questions rather than kind of pithy questions
Like
that Marty was
small
kind of
talk.
going small talk indeed. Giving him an opportunity and given the fact that he was obviously drunk at the stage, it's easier to open up and kind of. I mean, that's whatever's in your front of your mind's coming out in that kind of stage if you can give the chance. But I did think it was kind of a juxtaposition of their approaches to how they deal with people.
Yeah.
And even though he was drunk and Marty was raging at him turning up, but she didn't mind. She was still engaging in conversation, and the kids with the table and all of that kind of stuff was great.
And was she so curious because she doesn't get that kind of interaction from her husband? Is that maybe she was craving that some kind of interaction?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something because even he's out of the room at that stage and doesn't get involved in any of it. It's very much when he leaves the room that she has the adult conversation in the room.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because the scene where he does try and get him to go home and Russ stays is just terrific.
Yeah. The look he gets from him when he's, oh no, it's no big deal. He's like, well, do you
Yeah.
have to go? He's like, oh no, it's fine. Wait till tomorrow.
Katie says, I think Marty, because of his possible infidelity, is also a bit afraid because of how good and observant Rust is. Oh, that's very clever. I think the point was made earlier on that, yeah, the flirting with the secretary.
Oh yeah.
Russ noticed earlier on. Missed
Yeah,
that himself, I have to say.
yeah, he jumps up pretty quick when she walks in the room. So
Yeah. really terrific about that.
mm.
So I think the next part of I think that's a lot of the kind of main exposition and dump of the characters and everything that happens from there on in. As far as I was concerned, in my notes was them either starting to progress down the initial stages of the case, or we were introducing a couple more complexities, like I was saying with the governor coming in, and then the scenes with Cole and Marty in and around other people, like the other people in the office, which I think is an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic as well.
Yeah, we that one person goes with the flow and the other one doesn't. Doesn't really necessarily go with the flow. He questions things. He's not just playing. He's not just going along for the ride. He's going to question things, which I think fits into their personalities each side, and that's having that yin and yang together. There's a lot of yin and yang, and the when I'm trying to be very, very careful here, but when they visit the husband of the murdered woman, that conversation was very interesting too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's all those small conversations between people that you're kind of reading between the lines all the time to try and figure out people's personal motivations, their private motivations, or otherwise when they go in and investigate. Is it a case that the person interviewing, has he had a stroke? Is he the pitcher?
I'm not sure if they go into detail with that. I think I'm not sure exactly what happened to him, but I know he was disabled at the time they visited him.
Yeah. To go, and he obviously wasn't before because they knew him when he pitched for LSU, I think, was it, or something like that at the time. Yeah, I picked up a lot on Aaron's point here, which is there was a lot of posturing with the other cops. It was very much the boys' club again. As Marty comes out and makes a dig at the captain to fit in, and kind of having a dig at authority just because it's kind of the boys' club thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of that too, and kind of the like they're incompetent almost. Like I think he mentions to them, oh, how was the did you find anything at the bar, because they all smell like alcohol. So they were out goofing around when there was this big case going on.
Yeah. Alicia's made the point about when they were having the conversation, the sort of equal playing field between the two of them in that conversation.
That's a great observation.
Yeah, I think especially for the large part of the first episode, you do see two of them as a level, just being chalk and cheese with each other. That's only when they get put into the setting of the police station that you actually see some are more equal than others in terms of the group dynamic that's there.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely there's different tiers and kind of like who the alphas are in the room.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. K2 says Marty and Russ Size is everything a good job, is liked by colleagues, respected as a loving wife and happy, healthy kids. Meanwhile, Russ Laxer has lost all of that in some way. And yet I sort of identify with Rust a bit more in the kind of bookwormy kind of attention to detail. Part of that, but obviously the sadness and the misery is playing in the rest of his demeanor for sure.
Yeah, and just excellent performances all the way around.
Oh man,
yeah, just excellent performances from everyone. And with the interviews, there's a lot of we like I said, we know a lot of things from those conversations, and we also have the two detectives who are interviewing them. There's also their interactions with them too.
Because they're not really revealed maybe until about 2/3 of the way through the episode, and you realize, oh right, okay, and we don't even really question the fact that they're interviewing on the other end. It kind of almost feels like a documentary or mockumentary in some ways up to that point, insofar as we get these two people being talking to camera with kind of like a faceless nature to it, but actually we realize that this is actually part of a follow-up investigation based on the fact that, and I maybe picked this up wrong at the end, but the reason for the interview was that they've got a new case similar and that they convicted somebody for this previous crime beforehand. I think that's what they said at the end. I think that's what I got of it. And
I'll be careful. So they did mention how there's news. They know there is public information that there's some things that in the new case that wasn't public that happened back then, but they also mentioned, well, how can it be the same person when we caught them back in 90 whatever?
And as Aaron quite rightly says, that I think the episode ends with start asking the right and answering the right questions. That's pretty much the bit, and you kind of cut to, okay, we've been pissing about for an episode here in a lot of ways, that we're kind of not at it. We're not we're not really delving deep into what's actually going on.
Yeah, and also the two detectives who were interviewing them, they know all the tricks. So the tricks that they would normally use to interview someone, they can't really use the same tricks. So it's that tension also between them. They're trying, like a cat and mouse thing, where they're trying to get information when that person knows all the tricks that they're talking to. So how do you question someone? What kind of tricks do you use to get that information from them?
which in this case seems to be just to ask them about their character. You know, to
Mhm.
kind of dig into who they are as people, rather than worry about the bits of the case or actually that bit, because like we've a lot of episodes to cover before we get to the real nitty gritty. That's kind of one of my takeaways, you know. But
Yeah.
it's a very clever device to do that, because with a very character based show, we as the watcher want to find out who these people are. You
Mhm.
know, you sort of want to root for them for one and not the other one. But actually, I think, as has been pointed out a couple of times, you kind of get a feel like they both got merit and value.
Yeah, and I was really surprised how heavy character focused it was. I think that's why I like it so much. I think
Hmm.
so I started to realize that a little bit. But yeah, there's yeah, and they also mentioned a few other things in this episode. They mentioned, well, do you want to know about the time this happened? Oh no, we'll talk about that later. Or do you want to know about
Mhm.
this that happened? So it sets up a lot of future things that happen, but we don't know how those things happen or what it all means yet. So really, really smart ways of just dropping little clues of this is what may happen later, or this is what will happen later, and what does it mean what's happening now versus what happened back then. So really, really smart way to a really smart first episode, I thought.
Yeah, I think it really showcases what can be great about long form TV like this,
Hmm.
insofar as like the kind of things and narrative devices that they use here. You can't use in books in the same way. You can't even use in movies the same way, because you are dropping literally those little breadcrumbs along the way, even to suggest where the next couple of episodes are going to go.
Hmm.
Um, and like I've just come back from teaching literacy class where we're doing off mice and men, etc. And one of the questions that I'm posing to students is, right, you get to a certain point of the book, how does the author try and ensure that you keep coming back and watching it again? Like, what are the things that he's done to this point that make sure that that you go to sleep, pick it up again tomorrow, and keep on going with it? And there's so many things I would say in this first episode that kind of allude to that.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. That's a great point too of kind of once you, well, what did happen or what how did this happen? And you want to know when it's going to happen too. Is it at the end? Is it the next episode? When does that event
Hmm.
happen? Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got you've obviously got the play of the couple of characters. You've got all the intrigue and theming that goes on. You've got this very evocative scene and staging of a death scene. There's lots of like mysteries within the mysteries,
Mhm.
and then they throw in the last, which is when Cole goes for a walk around the outside of the house, and you
Yeah.
find that this wasn't just staged within the murder scene. These little devil traps are found elsewhere.
Mhm. Yeah, when they visit the church too, I think it's the unrelated case, but the pastor there or the deacon or I'm not sure what kind of church it was, but
Denomination, yeah.
yeah, he talked about the cats that have been killed and nailed to
That's
the
right.
door. So you kind of get like how widespread is this occult stuff, or is that nothing? And I liked when he tells them, well, I asked for this to be investigated, and they say, well,
Mm.
they told him, well, we're not that kind of police, and he says, well, who is?
It's
I
a
was
great
like,
line.
yeah, yeah.
It's a fantastic line. Of course, that's Clark Peters, I think, from The Wire. If
Oh, he's
anybody's,
excellent. He's excellent.
one of my favorite characters in all of The Wire. Probably number
Oh,
two character in The Wire, because everybody's got the same number one, I think.
Bunk is your number one,
Oh
or
no, Omar's the
oh,
number one.
or not Omar. This jeez, um, I forget his name. He
But
is
Bunk's
a
a pretty great shot, though.
yeah. I'll think of it. Oh, that I keep thinking Fuzzy Dunlop. Uh, yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, we'll talk after. But
Yeah,
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 the
yeah.
I forget his name. The actor who should be the next James Bond.
Idris Elba's Stringer Bell.
Yes, Stringer Bell. Yeah, he was
Indeed,
excellent too.
he's
Yeah.
brilliant. I mean, that's another very heavy character, driven show,
Mhm.
but a lot more characters. You know, they play with character. This one is a lot less. They do a lot more with a lot less.
Very focused. Yeah.
Between these two certainly, and then just kind of sprinkle these kind of little pods from the side, you know, to say, oh, your interact relations with this character, your relations with this character. How does this kind of push people in different ways, especially Marty's wife, who seems to like sort of already have a much more comfortable relationship with Cole than their husband, you know. Um,
Yeah, it's yeah. I didn't really yeah well, he shows interest, and he's they show interest in each other.
yeah,
So it's not just a out of obligation like it is with Marty.
yeah,
But I do like how he tells him you have to come over for dinner because it's what you do. Kind of like I don't really care. It's just something you have to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that social norm thing, he's doing the kind of, this is what you're supposed to do when you have a partner. This is what the questions you're supposed to ask when you're silent in the car. This is what you're supposed to say when you come out of the boss's office. They're all very social norms things that don't necessarily make him a bad person, but make him sort of predictable and recognizable, I think, to an awful lot of us. They usually know that person they went to school with or college with or work with or anything like that.
Yeah, even I think you can even say he's a little he's not, I don't want to say socially awkward, but he brings flowers to dinner, and Marty almost makes fun of him, like, oh, that's someone told him he's supposed to, so he did. He didn't. Like, he kind of laughs at him, like, it was what a dumb thing to do, but he was making an effort to be there and to bond. So you could tell he wants some kind of connection. He wants some kind of he wants something. He's looking for it. He's making an effort.
He's making an effort there, whereas he can't unpack the boxes in his house. He can't move in his house. So Aaron had said, can't remember any of the twists, to be honest. I literally can't remember what happens in 2, 3, or 4 in any of these episodes. So it's quite nice to see. Kate Hudson's saying, yeah. True Detective, one of the first shows that did this so well. This kind of very short run. I mean, the Wire, etc. came before, but I feel like The Wire is such a very different show. Sopranos was around the same time, where they had these big ensemble casts, that tell very self-contained stories that I would say in some ways aren't even overly dramatic. They're very much character studies about different aspects of life and interrelationships between people. And this kind of did that, but like I say, on a much smaller scale.
I think that kind of goes back to what you said before we went live, is how this changed TV in a way. Like I think the idea of what you can create changed with this series a little bit. I think people started to realize, well, we can tell certain types of stories.
Yeah. I think that's one of the problems with TVs. Well, actually, all medium, you could say the same about fantasy books to a certain extent. Somebody has to push the boundaries and be successful in a different type of telling stories for people to go, all right, so we can do this now, or we can just do this very simple thing with it. Matthew's fashionably late as usual.
Eating dinner.
Eating dinner. I hope it's nice.
That was good.
I should say a lot of the issues that I have with a lot of TV shows now is they cut and forth back between two timelines too quickly, and with this show they give each timeline time to breathe.
Yeah, and they also talk about what's about to happen, so they give an introduction, so it sets the stage for what we're about to see.
Yeah,
it's not really quick. You have room to kind of get comfortable and kind of get established, and then it goes back.
What I find interesting is though that it is quite complex though. The kind of the ways that they get around it and simplify that is to make the visual appearance so very different between the two, so you're never really lost. Again, the use of different types of cameras for the modern day compared to the old even the color and hue of some of the things changes from bit to bit, so you're never really lost with how to do it. And I think those are the kind of things that I always attribute to having great director, somebody that's in very control of the story. And I think that's one of the reasons why this show is so successful, even though I haven't seen the end of it. When you have one creative voice person looking after the writing and directing, you get create the visual theming, the kind of ideas and iconography and stuff that carry the way through the series, and having a consistent voice and runner. And when that works well, it's very successful. And when it's not
so much.
Not so much indeed.
The color correction on the flashbacks or the 90s scenes where it has that dull color to it. It's not too dramatic, but it's enough to give you that feeling like, okay, this is the past.
Yeah, it's like almost like the sepia tone of old pictures, but it's nowhere near as harsh as that. It's just
Right.
ever so slightly there. And again, when you have a well-known idea that sepia means going in the past, nostalgia, you only need to flicker it a little bit, and
Yeah.
I put that forward. Yeah. Aaron had said having them being interviewed rather than just seeing the future works well. Yeah, I think so. And even they're sort of unreliable narrators in some ways because it's recollection, from an awful lot of point of views from 17 years in the future.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Goose to shoot up. Evening.
Good evening.
Katie said the relationship between Rust and Morty's Rife reminds me of the relationship between Freeman and Brad Pitt
in Seven.
Freeman in Seven. I haven't thought about that, but there are a lot of similarities with Seven here.
There are, yeah, because Brad Pitt is kind of like I'll say loose cannon, but he's kind of a mess. He does, he doesn't follow the rules, and he's well intentioned. He's just kind of a disaster. And Morgan Freeman's the established, he knows what he's doing and he's in control, or at least he wants to feel like he is.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I didn't thought of that.
But even the use of color, like these bounce around in time, like obviously, like Seven's a super stylized film, again unusual for the time. But they use a lot of the darks and the gritty to kind of convey theme in there as well. That's really interesting. I'm gonna be watching these next couple of episodes with Seven in mind. I'm gonna have to rewatch Seven. Haven't seen it in so many years, but
yeah,
there definitely is that feeling that Fincher influenced an awful lot of this style of TV and filmmaking for sure.
Yeah, because the end, not only the end, just the crimes that were committed in Seven. I think at the time everyone was shocked when it, but now it's like, oh, it's okay. It's not as shocking now. So that really did, I don't want to say open doors, but I think it changed the way that the kind of stories that would be, that maybe you wouldn't take a chance telling before. Yeah. And once that was successful, and it's like, okay, then we can get a little crazy.
Yeah, I definitely think of the scene that's Sloth in Seven, where the guy's been overfed and on the table, but the scene is not really all about him. They just walk around him and talk around him and kind of talk about the fact of what he is, even though like it's a visually very striking thing that if any normal person walks in will just only be looking at that, and they're kind of working the case, working the room, a bit like R2 around this exactly like here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All I have to do is just hope that somebody here just starts screaming at the end, "What's in the box? What's in the box?"
No.
What's the box? What's the box? So no, don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
Which says, even though I know everything that happens in Seven, I get creeped out. I would agree with that. Like, it is a very creepy movie, and it's definitely one of those films. Like, my kids are getting to that age where they kind of want to watch more interesting films, and like invariably, my eldest one, I'll go, "No, you can't watch that," and she went, "Seen it 3 years ago." Every film I think maybe in another year she'll be good enough to watch that movie, and she's like, "No, seen it." My two kids at 10 and 11 have watched Heathers, and I'm like, "What? Wow. That's a bit heavy and severe." And it's like, "No, I've seen it 3 times," and I'm like, "Well, you may as well take the Blu-ray and the DVD upstairs with you and watch it again and again." Then
go crazy,
just crazy. My eldest is really into Jordan Peele as well at the moment, so she's kind of going through that kind of real twisted kind of stuff as well, and enjoying the filmmaking of that. So that's episode 1. Episode 2, I've literally no idea what's going to happen other than somebody's going to ask the bloody right questions. Apparently, that's what's going to happen. Maybe so. Anything else you want to bring up, Steve? Anything that jumps out?
No, I think I think we about covered it.
Yeah.
Unless someone in the chat has anything.
Yeah. I just had Sarah says, at least they're home and know what they're doing. I mean, I would say that, but again, the seen Heathers 3 years before I thought they'd seen it. I'm obviously not doing that great a job. They still went to sleep that night. When I was their age, I seen Gremlins and couldn't sleep for
weeks.
For a long time.
Yeah.
Or the first Terminator movie was another one that really freaked me out when I seen it. hiding underneath the counter in the police station. Oh, those kind of images took a long way to get rid.
Have you seen RoboCop lately?
Oh man, I
It
have
was
actually.
super violent.
It's one of those classic things where your perception of watching later movies or what the kind of mimicry that people had of those movies replaces what the actual fact of the movie is. You know, RoboCop's ridiculously violent. It's unreal. It's shocking.
It's
that is
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy violent. I was surprised how violent it was.
Yeah.
But I watched it when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11. I don't remember being shocked or anything, but now as an adult, it's like, wow, this is
I
pretty
remember
bad.
being shocked about 82.9 about how vicious some of those murder scenes were, about the kind of, the indiscriminate nature that it just murdered millions of people. But it's a couple of scenes that I'd totally forgotten that I thought, oh god, that should have been funny, like the shooting scene between the legs. That shouldn't be a gruesome scene, but it's absolutely, oh,
Yeah,
it hurts.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. So Alicia says, my parents let me watch so many movies as an adult. And I'm like, how did you let me watch that?
Why did you let me see that? Yeah,
Yeah. Look, we've all turned out okay. I don't think
Yeah.
it's went completely wrong.
I think we're okay. Yeah, I like to
Yeah.
think so anyway. Yeah,
Well, exactly right. We just
I don't
like
wanna- yeah.
talking and discussing about really dark books and TV series and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So
How
that's
did it
us for next week. I've got to do my homework. Got to make my notes again, and then Steve's got to do his poker face. And
Yeah, it's gonna be. I didn't realize how tough it might be as we get further in, but I'll do my best to not. I think I'm just gonna watch one episode a week because I
Mhm.
want to be sure that I'm not revealing anything because there's a lot of events, so I have to be careful not to spoil anything later in the series.
yeah, and as Aaron says, resisting the urge to binge. I'm determined not to. I nearly did 2 episodes back to back, and I thought no, because then I'll not be able to stop myself. It's just like anything else. I'd be talking about episode 1, going, but oh, that's irrelevant now, or that's been replaced with this theory, or otherwise. So, that's it. So, thanks everybody for coming along. Steve, you can let everybody know what videos you've got coming up planned for the next couple of days of the.
I actually
Of the
don't know.
channel?
I have to post. I have a few done, and I don't know what to post next. I have Martyrs. I have Overlord. I have I think was it Triangle, and I have Bloody Hell. No, do I have that edited yet? I have a bunch that are just in the
stuff there.
can, ready to go. So I'll
Cool.
have to decide
So
what to release.
you can catch that on Steve Talks Movies, or if you
Yep.
fancy going nuts, you can head to Steve Talks Books.
You want to get crazy? Yeah, you can do books
So
or movies.
mix up your hobbies. It works for me. That's all I can tell you. And you can catch us next week on Steve's channel. I'm going to do a better job of getting it out in my socials to let people know where it is and where it's going.
It's hard to remember. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's hard to keep up. And you had a busy week, so
Yeah, I came home and thought I better stick this out. And of course, by the time I went on to Twitter, Steve had already done it for me. I was like,
yeah. I try to keep up. It's hard sometimes.
yeah. So thanks everybody for checking in. And if you've got some theories and you don't know what happens, you can stick them down in the comments again, and then we can pull them up and start next week's show with them as an idea. So before you watch episode 2, try not to spoil, please.
Yeah.
And,
Be nice.
We'll catch you next time on the channel. Well, it's Steve's channel at the same time next week for episode 2.
Same time.
Take care, everybody.
Cool. Thanks
All the
everybody.
best.